Retroid, to me, hasn't really done anything different or innovating. Just cheap and good enough. Even when other companies are making similar products that are a bit better, Retroid's flagship landscape handhelds are usually easy to recommend because they have a good price to performance ratio. However, the quality is sometimes a bit of a miss. And let's face it, the designs have gotten a bit boring. How many landscape handhelds do we need in our lives? This is at least interesting. I love the idea of portrait handhelds. I love that DMG style. I also really like having a square-ish screen because most of the retro games we'll be playing on here anyway are best suited for 4x3 and not 16x9. This does come with some other challenges, like not having thumbsticks. But the most intriguing thing about this for me is the 6 face buttons. This device comes in 7 colorways. All of them have 4 face buttons, which is pretty common these days, except for one of the colorways, the classic 6 colorway. This one has 6 buttons. It looks like, you know, the classic Japanese Sega Saturn controller. Having 6 buttons would make classic Sega Genesis, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, and even some Capcom arcade games a lot easier to play. But my ears didn't immediately perk up because of Sega Saturn games. No. And let's be honest, most of the Sega games that I play don't require more than 3 buttons. I was mostly intrigued to play N64 games on here. Yeah, it doesn't have a thumbstick, it has a D-pad. But I've played enough N64 with the D-pad to know that it's not all that bad. It's the C buttons for me. Having only 4 face buttons is usually a huge problem. Even having a right stick is sometimes not satisfactory enough. Sometimes it's better to be able to press a button than it is to flick a stick. This kind of fixes that. You have all of the face buttons you need for N64 games. You got an A and a B button and 4 C buttons. Sure, they're scrunched together and angled a little weird, but it works and it's more intuitive than you might think, okay? You gotta trust me on this one. This is the Retroid Pocket Classic. It's not the perfect handheld. It's still got some Retroid bullshit going on, and these extra buttons introduce some new problems, but it might be my favorite Retroid ever, and trust me, I was not expecting that at all. I mean, I've certainly had the best time with this one so far.
This video is sponsored by Ugreen and their Genshin Impact series. Oh, you playing already without me? Get me in there! Yeah, man, join up. My battery's dead, but I stopped by 7-Eleven and got this charger for $2. Are you sure you can trust that charger? You know, you always got something to say. You think you're so cool with your hair and your pants. All right, man, do whatever you want. I will. Yeah, it didn't do anything. Yeah, I figured. Here, try this. Whoa! Is that? Yeah, man. That's Knish. Knish or Knish? Yes. Oh. Check out Ugreen's Genshin Impact series now with a limited edition 5-star character Knish themed design. Wow.
Oh, wow. That was sick. Oh, can I take your old one now?
Shut up. Their Nexode power bank with a maximum of 100 watts in a single port or a total of 130 watt dual output.
Charge up to 3 devices at once.
20,000 milliamp hour capacity and a cool smart TFT display. Or their Nexode charger with up to 65 watts for 3 devices simultaneously. Finally, the MagFlow wireless charger with Qi 2 certification, 15 watt fast charging for iPhones, and it can charge up to 3 devices at once.
I use this next to my bed, but this one's smaller.
And the C2C cable. Look, it's green. Wow. Oh, yeah, it's such a cool green.
Check out the links in the description below for up to 20% off of these and other Ugreen chargers.
All right, that's charging, but I'm still a little mad at you. All right, well, while that charges, let's go get some lunch. It's on me. Ooh, let's go to the diner again. I'll get the scallops. Ew. See, there you go again. I hate when you do that.
I'm sorry.
It's supposed to be a little fishy smelling and slimy, and you got all weird about it last time. That's how it is. That's how I like it.
I'm sorry. While we're on the topic of Genshin Impact, this is Android 14, so you can just straight up play Android games on here. But I did have a little trouble with Genshin Impact at first. Turns out, not having a thumbstick does screw up a lot of things, but there is a setting that I missed initially. In the Retroid's Android settings, under handheld settings and input, you can just enable a virtual joystick. This fixes a lot. But you would still probably want to enable the on-screen key mappings by swiping from the right side of the screen and mapping each button to a corresponding screen press. It's still not the most ideal way to play Genshin Impact, but at least you can. It would just be nice if you could easily toggle this on and off in some way, instead of having to go all the way back into the settings every time. But playing games this way is also benefited by the 2 additional face buttons. Now you have more buttons to correspond to on-screen controls, which can be useful in some more complicated games. But not having thumbsticks is a little bit limiting. It's powerful enough to play a lot of the more modern games, but you are going to be limited by the control configuration. I personally don't think that's the end of the world. I think you kind of know what you're getting yourself into when you buy this thing. You can just tell, you could see it, you could see the problem. The device itself is smaller than an actual DMG Game Boy, and slightly smaller still than an RG 40XXV. The 40XXV is notable because it does have a thumbstick, but the thumbstick on that thing is god-awful. It registers inputs exactly like a D-pad would by snapping to cardinal directions, which defeats the purpose of having a thumbstick. You can install custom firmware to fix it, but that's annoying. It's also way less powerful than a Retroid, topping out at N64, Dreamcast, and DS emulation. The Retroid can hit GameCube and PS2 emulation, and it does a pretty good job of it. It can even hit some really, really light Switch emulation. And I mean really light. Don't expect to be playing Mario Odyssey on here or anything. It's definitely powerful, but it benchmarks terribly. It received the lowest 3D Mark score of any handheld that I've ever tested, which is weird because it played most games just fine. It's also only $130, so performing that good and staying that cheap gives it a lot of points.
What the f? That's like really low. I thought it would do better than that.
While it is decently powerful, it does have a fan in it. I have it really low right now. But when I'm doing all my testing, I like to test these things at the highest performance mode, which means you'd probably want the fan on the highest that it can go.
And there it is.
It's honestly not that loud compared to other devices, but it is particularly high-pitched. So it is definitely an annoying sound. Moving the fan mode over to smart does help things. And luckily, most of the games that you're playing on here aren't going to overheat the console anyway. So you can probably just leave it on smart most of the time. You set this thing up just like any Android device, except Retroid will suggest some apps for you in the setup process. A lot of retro handheld enthusiasts and YouTubers would suggest that you download your own apps, but for the sake of simplicity, these are fine. If you don't know which ones to get, just get all of them. They're free. These are apps that will play your ROMs. This is a bring your own ROMs device. Retroid does provide a launcher so that you can navigate and launch all of your games and ROMs, but it sucks really bad now. In my Retroid Pocket 5 and Pocket Mini review, the app just did not work at all. Now it loads, but there is no indications on where you should put your ROMs or how to get the app to scan them or anything. Someone on my live stream let me know they have to go into each game directory and press X. This is indicated nowhere in the app at all, except for maybe this little text right here that I missed. It's also, by the way, not indicated anywhere on the internet.
You're a lifesaver. You gotta go to details. This fucking thing sucks.
And then I did it, and it took like a really long time just for me to get my Game Boy Advance games to download. What are we downloading? It's downloading box art. But the communication in this app is so bad. It's a lot of broken English, so I kind of understand it to an extent. Everyone was telling me to cancel it. You literally cancel the loading bar and all of your games are there. How would I have ever known to do any of this? And again, there's no information online whatsoever because nobody uses their app. Everybody just uses other launchers. It's such a waste to spend so much time developing an app specifically for this device and then just botching the communication so much that nobody can use it. And what's even crazier is that the old one was fine. The old one was just fine. We could have just give me that one back. Anyway, just use a launcher like Emulation Station. It's way easier. Retro Game Core has a tutorial on that. It makes life great. It just creates folders for you. Just put the games in those folders and you're all set. It knows where everything is. This screen is around 4 inches, so 1240 by 1080 pixels. It is a very weird aspect ratio. No retro systems use this aspect ratio, but it is the same exact aspect ratio and resolution as the Aya Neo Pocket DMG. And what I learned from that device is that this weird square-ish aspect ratio is kind of right in the middle of a lot of different retro handhelds and retro consoles, and it ends up displaying them all very well with minimal letterboxing. A 4x3 screen might have some pretty hefty window boxing or black bars on the sides for Game Boy games. This screen does not do that, and it still displays 4x3 content like SNES games pretty decently too. When playing SNES, I noticed the screen wasn't scaling all that great. You can see it a little bit in Mega Man's health bar. It's really not terrible. It's not the end of the world. But to make it look perfect, we can fix this by enabling integer scaling. Not a problem. But lately, I've been into shaders, trying to get the whole retro CRT look in my retro games. So I enabled the CRT Geom shader, and I was a little bit surprised at how terrible it made the game run. It was like way slower. I didn't think it would have that much of an effect on the GPU, but it does. Changing the renderer from GL to Vulkan doesn't seem to help at all. Swapping over to CRT Geom Mini does seem to fix things, and it doesn't really look all that different. It's just weird that the shader would cause that much of a problem. Right after writing this, I was casually browsing Reddit, and I came across this post where somebody compiled a list of all of the different shaders that will run great on a Retroid Pocket Classic, and I thought, this is exactly what I've been looking for. This guy did a great job compiling all the... How does somebody have the time? It's Retro Game Core. I noticed at the very end, it's Retro Game Core. Anyway, Game Boy and Game Boy Color games also look pretty fantastic on here. I would also just enable one of the handheld shaders. One of the ones with the nice sub-pixel coloring. It's beautiful on this nice, bright AMOLED screen. It's... However you want to say it, by the way. I get a lot of shit for saying OLED instead of OLED. It's an acronym. It's both. You could say both. AMOLED doesn't sound as good. Of course, N64 is why I came here initially. We have the Mupen standalone emulator for that. It's one of the ones that Retroid recommends that you download. Even though I paid $5 for it once, I should just use the paid version. You'll want to just open the Mupen app first and configure the controls. This 6-button console works best with emulators that will allow you to map the buttons by pressing them instead of selecting them from a list. I mapped the left stick to the D-pad, but I guess you could just also toggle that joystick toggle setting I mentioned earlier. This button is B and this button is A. And the rest are C buttons orientated at this angle. It's a little weird, given the angle the buttons are set at, but it honestly took no time at all for me to adjust while playing. It's intuitive if you've ever played these games with an actual N64 controller. What becomes really frustrating is the button legends. They're wrong for basically every retro game that isn't a Sega game. Just don't look down at your fingers. Feel it out. Mapping these top 4 buttons to C buttons feels great for games like Perfect Dark, where you need all those C buttons to aim. Or even Mario 64. Tapping the left and right C buttons feels great for moving the camera around. I will have to fight the ergonomics of this thing just a little bit. The buttons are a little bit cramped because there are so many of them, but that's not really my issue. My issue is pressing the L2 button. You have to reach over the L1 button a little bit, and that kind of messes up your grip somewhat. So playing on my couch with no support feels a little weird. It's not deal-breaking, but it is weird. Playing at a desk feels totally fine because my hands are supported by the desk. So I guess it's a great device for N64 sometimes. You might miss that analog stick for some precision Mario 64, but honestly, I can live without it 90% of the time. C buttons are harder to live without for a lot of N64 games, in my opinion. I did run into another weird scaling issue. Text in Mario 64 does look a little weird. Everything else looks great, but Nothing I did in Mupen got the text to look better. It doesn't look like this in other emulators. Playing the game in RetroArch does make the text look great, but configuring controls in RetroArch is kind of really annoying. I still, to this day, am not 100% confident I know how to save settings in RetroArch. I have a lot of hours in RetroArch. I use it a lot. And sometimes I feel like I'm saving the configuration file and it just doesn't save. And I'm not 100% convinced that that's all user error. But it could be. Anyway, let's move up to Sega games. Unfortunately, they don't really just work with the 6-button controller because the system doesn't know how to map these 2 extra buttons, which is a shame because Retroid, you made the fucking thing. Maybe give us a way to globally change the way that these 2 buttons act. Maybe make them work like left and right stick clicks so that they'll easily register in other games and apps so we can control them in the settings of those games and apps easier. These extra buttons don't even show up in Retroid's own button tester program. It's a little ridiculous. They really did just slap 2 extra buttons on here and call it a day. Most Sega games will be run through RetroArch. To set up these buttons there, go to the general RetroArch controls, not the core controls. This was my bad at first. So back all the way out to settings, input, RetroPad binds, port 1 controls, and now here you can remap all the buttons one at a time by clicking a button and holding the corresponding button you want to map. Do this to make sure that RetroArch knows what button is what. This is only necessary if you want to use those extra 2 top buttons. That should be all that you have to do. The next time you load, make sure you save the configuration file and pray to Obi-Wan that these settings will stay this way the next time you load it. Sega CD and Sega 32X games will run pretty great with the default settings, aside from the controller tomfoolery that you have to screw with. And it is really nice to finally feel motivated to give some of these games a try. I don't know why I never really played these games on the plethora of emulators that I have. Maybe I'm deterred because of that control scheme. I've always wanted to try Knuckles Chaotix, for example, and now I have a reason to. It's weird. I was a Sega kid growing up, and I always wanted a 32X and a Sega CD, but my parents wouldn't get it for me because they knew it was a terrible financial decision, and I was just a dumb kid who wanted all of the cool new things when they came out. But sitting on my couch, playing Knuckles Chaotix, I had a bit of like an existential moment. Imagine being a child in the 90s and then seeing this thing. Here I am, a grown-ass man sitting in my house in the year 2025, playing a state-of-the-art for 1995 game that nobody had because it was prohibitively expensive. And I'm playing it on a handheld that's smaller than a Game Boy. No need for the Tower of Power or anything. I have all that power right here. And then I thought about where I am in my life and how my 6-year-old mind would be absolutely blown by all the awesome things I get to do and experience on the day-to-day. And then I had to put the Retroid down and walk away. It's like 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'm only 1 coffee deep, and I can't let anybody see me like this. What? Nothing. I'm gonna make coffee. You want something? What were we talking about? Besides Knuckles Chaotix, there's other Sega games that I wanted to try. Popful Mail is a really weird side scroller. It's got some beautiful full motion video animations and great voice acting that kind of caught me by surprise. This is a Sega CD game that also works great on here.
Oh, I biffed it.
Sega Saturn is a little more difficult to get going. You can use RetroArch and it works fine for the most part. I've played Burning Ranges before on my original Ein Odin. Back then, Saturn emulation was pretty terrible. It runs way better now. So this was fun to play with these controls. You get the idea. I've been having a lot of fun exploring this library of games that I haven't really had much experience with, but I've always wanted to try these. Let's level up to some GameCube emulation. I've been using the Dolphin for handheld that came with the Retroid. I don't think that's the best version of Dolphin to be using for this, but it honestly works great once you configure the controls and change the renderer to Vulkan. It should have probably defaulted to that. The exact same is true for PS2 emulation. I used the Aether app that also came with the Retroid, and at first, it ran pretty bad. but swapping over to Vulkan again had it running mostly at full speed. This probably shouldn't even be able to play GameCube and PS2 games with this level of stability, given the price, the benchmarks, and the SoC that's in here. Qualcomm actually labels this SoC as a cloud gaming chip, which doesn't instill a lot of my confidence in this dedicated handheld. But it does a good job, and it surprised me a lot. Don't expect to play every GameCube or PS2 game, but you might be surprised at the games it's capable of. Of course, bear in mind you have no thumbsticks, so that's probably more limiting than this device's raw power. You can get some Nintendo Switch games to run on here if you really wanted to. It's not hard to find a Nintendo Switch emulator if you try hard enough. It's not going to emulate all those games all that well. Mario Odyssey, for example, loads, but you can't really get past the very beginning. First of all, you need a right stick, so that already f***s up everything. Second, you can't see anything. I've gotten past this part before on lower end devices by just kind of brute forcing my way through the jank, but that's just not going to happen here. Some lighter games, like Sonic Mania, for example, will have no problem at all. So you can do Switch if you really wanted to, but that's not what this device is for. This device is for more retro stuff that would look good on this square-ish screen, like 4x3 or close to 1x1 games like Game Boy games. Even some vertical games might look pretty good on here, but more than that, it just has more buttons than a lot of other portable emulators. So this is something you should be getting weird with. N64, Sega 32X, Sega Saturn. Maybe you like to play Android games that require you to use the screen mapping function, and you just need a lot of buttons to map. This might be the guy for you. The weird thing is that this device comes standard with just 4 buttons. Why the hell would you pay the same price for the same device with less buttons? What, just so you can get the Pokemon Yellow and Blue version? This has sort of become my favorite Retroid to use so far. Not because of its form factor or because of its impressive specs or anything. It's because it's allowing me to play certain games without having to compromise too much on the control configuration. And because of that, it's made using the Retroid Pocket Classic a great experience so far. It also happens to be a good handheld. There are other handhelds that are like Sega styled, and those are like just okay. Also, the price point is very good at $130. Now, I pre-ordered this way back in the day, and I paid $15 shipping on top of that. And that's not so bad. Now, if you add it to your cart, there seems to be $30 shipping. And I'm not sure if that's because of the tariffs and stuff, but it could be. I do know that Retroid warned about the tariffs, and they sort of rushed these things out to kind of get ahead of those tariffs. This thing is a great device at the price point, even with that $30 shipping added to it. I'm not sure if this would be a great device with 140% tariff added on top of the $130. You know what I mean? Which is a shame, because I finally have nice things to say about Retroid, and it would be a shame to not be able to recommend it because of reasons outside of their control. Retroid usually has manufacturing issues with their products. As far as I know, there's nothing game-breaking here with the Classic. They did announce that some colorways are just straight up going to be canceled for US buyers. Again, I don't really see that as 100% their fault. Now, this is still a Retroid product, so I wouldn't be surprised if, like, a week from now, somebody discovers that the screen isn't scaling things properly, or there's, like, a GPU underclock issue or something. But from what I experienced, this thing seems to be worth the price that I paid so far. As for similar devices, maybe you've been watching this and you really just can't imagine a world without a thumbstick. Well, I already mentioned my disdain for the RG40XXV, so ignore that one. There's also the Ioneo Pocket DMG. That one is kind of the king of the slate form factor retro handhelds. It even has a very similar screen, but it's OLED instead of AMOLED. And it has a thumbstick and a hidden trackpad. So it essentially has 2 thumbsticks. It's awesome and powerful. It can play Mario Odyssey just fine. but it is loud. You thought the Retroid was loud. This thing is screaming. And it's more than triple the price at its cheapest. So if money is no object, sure, that's the one to get. But unfortunately, money is an object. And with everything being as expensive as it's shaping up to be these days, maybe the Retroid is the safer bet. And besides, where the hell else are you going to get 6 buttons to motivate you to play those Sega games 7-year-old you was missing out on?
Hey, you are real funny girl. You make me laugh. Hey, you like a good joke? Ha! Boomba!
Why is he Italian?
What do you guys think about the Retroid Pocket Classic and the 6-button configuration? Does it have any applications that I didn't think of in this video? Leave it in the comments below, at me on Twitter, any and all this other social media garbage. I stream stuff like this sometimes on YouTube, usually on Sundays, and also on twitch.tv/WulffDen, and we can discuss things there. You can help me out with these reviews. Thank you, Ugreen, for sponsoring. Don't forget to check them out. And of course, the most important thing you can do to help support this channel is just subscribe. We've been edging 1 million for as long as you've known me. And share this video with a friend who's finally trying to get one of these things. Now, there might be a good one for them. Thank you very much. Have yourself a good one.